This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring author, psychologist, and daily contributor, Shavaun Scott.
The Black Swan murder trial of Ashley Benefield, it is underway, and it is a case that leaves a lot of questions out there. It's very much a he said, she said thing, but at the end of the day, how do you get to the facts? How do you get to determining what actually took place that resulted in the life of Doug Benefield being taken? Joining me to discuss, Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author. This is a tricky one. Obviously, you want to believe victims when the victims are telling the truth, but the reality is, I'm not saying she's not, victims or people sometimes claim they're victims when they're not, for their own self-gain. And that may be what is happening here. I think it's something that certainly needs to be analyzed, and that's what the jury is trying to figure out. When you look at this case from the onset of when our opening arguments, we'll take a listen in just a second. What are your thoughts going into it?
I'm finding it really interesting because I worked so much with domestic violence victims. I used to be the coordinator of a women's shelter counseling program. And the thing that we would look for is the story consistent? Is there corroborating evidence? Apparently, there was a bullet hole in the ceiling, and her story is that he fired a gun in the middle of an argument in an attempt to intimidate her. A fist through the wall. A story of a dog that was punched in the face and knocked unconscious. These are all really red flags for someone that even if he's not hitting her, he's trying to intimidate and bully her. And that really sets off my radar. The other thing that makes it difficult is many battered women don't talk about it because they're ashamed, they're embarrassed, and they feel foolish for being in the relationship. They don't know what to do, so they don't tell people. But sometimes they do. And so I think that's going to be another key area. Did she talk to people about these events? Did she express concern? There was also mention that he had a tracker on her car and was peeping in her windows. Do other people know anything about that? And if this turns out to be true, even half of this turns out to be provable, I think that tips the scale in her direction.
But that is the problem. How do you prove some of it? Because a lot of these things are simply allegations. Now, there is evidence. The daughter, in fact, testified, Doug's daughter testified to seeing that hole in the ceiling. Now, did she see him fire a gun? No, she did not. But if you were to guess and look at the circumstantial evidence and make an assumption, that could be what one would glean. She also testified about their relationship from what she did see of it when they were together. Let's take a look at some of that testimony, and then we'll talk on the other side.
How often would you say that Ashely and your father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashely was trying to get her point across that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. And what would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round?
Yes.
Consistent with an object?
Objection, speculation.
Let me finish the question. Consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Now, obviously, if there's gunplay going on at the home, that's never a good thing. And like you said, that is very much one trying to intimidate someone. It is a still he said, she said thing. I'm surprised we don't know more about exactly what occurred there. But it certainly, if to be true, does help us understand a little bit more about the battered woman syndrome that that she's claiming in all of this. That being said, was the shots justified? That's the question I think that we have here. If he wasn't a clear and present danger, if he wasn't there trying to hurt her, which we don't know the answer to, could she have simply reacted based on previous interactions, based on that gun being fired, based on if there were previous threats, maybe overreacted, but reacted based on her definition of who Doug is in her mind, who he's demonstrated himself to be. And then Doug ends up losing his life, not necessarily because he was going to hurt her or anything in that moment, but because she perceived it based on her previous conditioning.
Yeah, that's one of the things about post-traumatic stress and what we call battered women syndrome is a type of post-traumatic stress. And people with that brain patterning, which is because of things that have happened to them, they tend to have big reactions. We always hear about, veterans who have been exposed to combat have big reactions when they hear firecrackers going off or cars backfiring. And that's one of the hallmarks of PTSD is having a big reaction to something that may not be all that threatening, but the person misperceives it. And it's just really hard to know. The other thing that struck me as unusual in the daughter's testimony is that she never once heard them have a disagreement. Couples always have disagreements.
Sure.
That's normal. And so that made me a bit concerned that perhaps unconsciously she's got a confirmation bias going on. She loves her father. She wants to remember her father well. And she may have heard things that she's just sort of wiping the slate clean. She doesn't want to present him that way.
And I think sometimes, too, when you're around people who are always, if the outside looking in, you go, wow, these people are disagreeing all the time. And then you bring up to them like, why are you guys always bickering at each other? We don't do that. We're not bickering. It's just like that's how they communicate into the rest of the world.
Exactly.
And if you're a child that is around that, I've been one of them. You get out of that situation and you realize, oh my gosh, wow, they really bicker a lot. But in your conditioning, this is normal life. So 100%. the way she described that, my dad listened to her. Probably did. But if one's going on and on and on about something, that's just not normal expression. That there's something that is troubling about that.
Want more of the podcast without the ads?
Then hit subscribe to the True Crime Today Premium Plus channel on Apple Podcasts.
Try it now for 3 days, absolutely free.
You'll get access to all of our extended advance ad-free episodes instantly.
So you can binge without the break. True Crime Today Premium Plus.
Search and subscribe now on Apple Podcasts.